Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. We're going to talk about one of the most important topics there is when it comes to running a successful business, and that's accountability. Now, it's not everybody's favorite sense of word because typically when we hear accountability, we think punishment or reinforcement, and that's not necessarily the case. Matter of fact, accountability is oftentimes quoted as the number one reason for hiring a coach. And more importantly, it's one of the number one reasons that differentiates good and great or better and best. Now, accountability is the way we measure our responsibilities. We should think about it as the glue between commitments and results. Another way of thinking about this, and that's quoted from James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, great book. I recommend everybody read it. But your accountability is what's going to ensure you go after the goals or the activities required to reach those goals. So if those goals are important to you, accountability is going to help us get there. Now, why accountability matters. It's not about punishment. I just started the call with that. It's actually the foundation of trust, clarity, and execution. We'll talk a lot about today ways that you can measure accountability, and they're going to involve different people and tools and or systems. And who you pick for those people in your corner are most important. That's going to establish that foundation. Without accountability, even the best business plan collapses. I've had years in my past years of mine where I've set fantastic business plans at the beginning of the year, and then 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, we've veered off track and we've completely shifted gears. Sometimes it's for the right reasons, sometimes it's not. Maybe we got impatient with the results that were showing up, or we saw a shiny object or something we thought would work better, and we try to force a round peg into a square hole, and that ends up getting us off track. Then we're left at the end of the year wondering what happened. Well, with the right accountability, the right people keeping you on course, the more likelihood that outcome is going to exist. So we mentioned big goals. With those big goals, if we have inconsistent action or we get off track, we fall short, and that leads to frustration. Now, distraction, I just mentioned that as a shiny object one. Lack of clarity. Sometimes we set goals that we think sound good. Something along the lines of, I want to sell 100 houses next year. Well, if you've ever told me in a conversation how many houses you want to sell, typically I will follow up that question with, why is that important to you? Or another way of looking at that is, what would selling 100 houses do for you and your family? Adding clarity or going deeper on why we set our goals makes us personally attached to those goals more firmly or more securely, which then adds a sense of clarity, which allows us to build a plan from there. In the past couple of weeks or couple of months, we've been setting goals for 2026. And if you noticed, we talked a lot about the why behind the what when it comes to setting our goals before we even put pen to paper on what that volume or unit goal may be in our real estate world. Now we have to track our activities and we have to measure what it's going to take to get to those goals. That's where that lead gen model comes into play. Or in other words, how many contacts or conversations do I have to hit my appointment goal? And what is my appointment goal that's going to be needed to hit my income goal or my unit and volume goal, which is going to translate to my income goal? Now, without accountability or without someone checking in, those activities are easily missed. If I tell my coach every week I'm going to have 100 conversations and I'm doing 75 to 80 conversations and he's not asking me how many conversations I'm having, well, there's a gap there. And that gap is typically what's going to keep me from hitting my goal versus not. And accountability, which my coach does hold me strongly to, by the way, he asks me every single week, how did your calls go last week? Or how did your conversation numbers go? We have other metrics we track as well. Now, today we're going to talk about 5 major ways to measure accountability. And these aren't necessarily in order, and yet, obviously, I'm teaching this call as a coach, and I do think having a person in your corner is the most important. That's why we start with that. Now, your coach helps set the standard. We implement best practices or we share best practices with you. Oftentimes, especially in real estate, there is somebody somewhere who has done what you are looking to do. And they have most likely modeled their behavior or tracked their results, especially if they've had a strong accountability partner or a coach. So much so that there's a book written about it, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. We quote it often. That red book has built models and habits, starting with fundamentals, that will reach different levels of the business. And you can model your habits and model your behaviors and model your activities off of something that already works. It takes the guesswork out of it. Now, once you've established that goal and you share it with your coach, They can help hold you accountable to the activities that are required to meet that goal. We just gave an example of conversations with my coach. They can also help problem solve. So if several weeks go by and you're finding yourself not hitting a certain activity or certain goal, the coach can help problem solve or navigate the why behind the what. What is stopping you from making those conversations? Is there an area of opportunity or an area of growth that we can have? Now, if you don't know what your goals are, we have activities or exercises we can walk through to help goal set. And we can set SMART goals, those specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals that we can all talk about. And then key activities as well as leaks in those activities. Maybe you set a goal for 5 social media posts a week and you're hitting 3 a week because you're not allowing enough time to get those activities done. Now, social media is a bit of a weird one because oftentimes we think we can just post and ghost or post and all the business will come towards us. And yet, if you talk with these agents that have modeled successful businesses off of social media, there's a lot more engagement and activity that goes on behind the scenes. So, some of those leaks in the activities may be you have written here social media is one of your sources and you're posting consistently, but the engagement factor is lacking. Well, that's the leak that we can take advantage of and we can implement some more engagement techniques or strategies. Now, number two, accountability partner. This is a big one, especially for those newer into the business, because typically a strong accountability partner is going to be someone with similar goals or a similar experience level to you, because you guys are going to hold each other accountable by mirroring each other's activities. A coach is typically somebody that either already has the experience, has the knowledge and wisdom, or both for where you're looking to go. Now, with your accountability partner, you should share your economic and lead generation models and or your goals. And then from there, your activities should start to mirror each other. It's not to say that everything's identical. We all have our own versions of getting business from different outlets or funnels or plans. That being said, we can hold each other accountable to some of the activities we know will get us where we want to go. Things like attending our group calls. If you have an accountability partner who you notice doesn't show up, you may text them on the call ins. Hey, missed you this morning. What's up? Team meetings, role plays throughout the week, sharing resources such as our case studies, or maybe a certain training that they came in and they missed. So you share them the link to say, hey, we talked about open houses last week. Make sure you go back and watch it. That accountability partner can be crucial to your success because you two are helping each other. We oftentimes get more by giving away. We can only keep what we have by giving it away. So once you have learned something, you can also further your own growth by sharing that with others. Now, make sure your accountability partner features some of these factors when you pick them. So number one, it has to be someone you respect. They have to be consistent. They also have to tell you the truth. This is a big one. Oftentimes, our accountability partner may sugarcoat something, or they may say, hey, I noticed you didn't hit your numbers last week. It's okay. You'll get them this week. Well, we need to go deeper and find out why we didn't hit those numbers. Sometimes we do have a legitimate excuse or reason for not reaching those numbers. Maybe we were sick for a couple of days, or we had a kid who was sick and we had to play parent for that day and it took us away from our business because of a different priority. That is okay. Your accountability partner is going to help you get back on track. They're going to be able to say, hey, that's not an excuse. It's a legitimate reason. And when your kid is better and when you're better, let's get back on track. And then someone who keeps it objective. The more familiar they are with your goals and your activities, the more they can speak to, hey, we have to be hitting these activities for your own goals. It doesn't make me happy how many calls or conversations you make. That's for you and your business. And I don't necessarily have to implement what I'm doing differently. And it doesn't need to be a competition either. Your accountability partner should be mirroring those activities, but that doesn't mean that they're exactly the same. Now, these are some key questions that you can ask when working with your accountability or your coach. Your coach may ask you these things. What did you commit to last week? Did you do it or how did it go? That follows up with what are the numbers? The more measurable your activities and your things being held accountable to can be, A, the better your accountability factors will be, both personally, internally, and externally with your partners. And B, the more legitimate you can track and follow these numbers, the more areas of opportunity you're going to see, both from a weakness standpoint that you can correct or a leak in those activities that we talked about, as well as opportunities of area for opportunity where you can grow, you can do more. So for example, if I'm making 50 conversations a week, and I'm hitting my numbers. Well, maybe I have an area where I can do 60 to 70 conversations a week, and it might lead to more business opportunities. And then lastly, what barriers exist? If you don't hit your numbers, what's going on that's stopping us from hitting those numbers? Is it a time blocking issue or a calendar issue? Am I choosing other priorities over my business? Do I have another job and that's a busy season there and I have to focus that attention there? Maybe I need to be more realistic on where I'm at in my current business. Now, these next two measures or ways to measure accountability are very important, and they are specific to Keller Williams. Actually, the next three are, and yet the next two are specific tools that you can use in any business. And we're going to talk about them briefly today, but next week, when we go back on live with a call, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about these next two tools. Now, the first one is a GPS. There should be an image showing up here, but that's okay because we're going to switch and show you one here in a second. Now, your GPS stands for one goal, three priorities, and five strategies. Now, I'm going to share an example with you here in a second. That being said, your one goal is oftentimes equivalent or related to your one thing. What is the one goal such by doing it makes all of the other goals achievable, easier, and or possible. So for example, if I have a goal to buy a new vehicle this year, selling the amount of houses I need to sell to hit my income goal makes buying a vehicle easier or possible or achievable because my income goal is set with the number in mind that it's going to take to buy that vehicle. And so my GPS is going to be around selling that number of houses to hit that income goal. Your goal should be something you have control over. It should not be something that you don't have control over, such as I want to have an average sales price of $1 million. That's a little bit more intangible or a little bit less trackable because if somebody were to call you tomorrow and say, I want to buy an $850,000 house, you would probably work with them. And that's not going to contribute to your goal because it's lower than your average sales price. And so you want your goal to be specific and measurable and attainable. We talked about that SMART goal earlier. Your three priorities are going to be three activities or funnel categories that will help you get there. The easiest way to understand this, and it'll be shown here in a second with the illustration, is these are your three lead gen funnels, the three areas of where your business is going to come from. Now, if you are newer, or if you haven't worked with a GPS before, I would rather, as a coach, see an individual or an agent that I'm working with have two very good priorities than stretch themselves to have three okay. Matter of fact, it's often found that 80 to 90% of businesses can generate most, if not all, of their volume from the top two sources. We've talked about how 80 to 85% comes from four sources. You can actually shrink that down and go more specific. So, for example, database should be your priority number one. Very often we can hit our goal, and we'll talk about this more next week. We can hit our lead generate or our production goal from just the database. If our database is big enough, if we communicate with it the right way and systematically ask for the business or referrals and get those, we can hit our goals from one priority. Now, our priority two may be a way to feed that database or grow that database. If you do have two good ones that are going to produce your volume goal, your third one may be an area of growth for yourself. It may be something that you can do to better yourself both in and out of the business. And then five strategies will be activities specifically within each funnel and a way to get there. Now let's take a quick look. So here's a sample GPS that we have for our business this year. If we want to sell our one goal of 40 units, we have three lead funnels to get us there, or three priorities. Number one is our database, which I have a note here includes sphere of influence, or people we know and have a relationship with, our past clients, sending us referrals, our repeat clients, which is past clients conducting business with us again, and then overall referrals, which may be people from the SOI that we already know. Our second priority is agent referrals. Now, the uniqueness of this is our agents that we work with by referral are in our database. And yet it's a different five strategies on how we communicate with the agents versus how we communicate with these categories in our database. And then in our case, priority three is a way to grow our database. It's also a way to grow our digital footprint where we may get some production out of it. And yet the most important thing is brand awareness in that case. It will also help further segment and supplement our database. Then we get into five strategies. Now notice these are specific 12 monthly newsletters. These are via email. 12 vendor recommendations via email. So we have 24 emails based on 2 strategies. 16 touches. These are broken down into 4 care calls a year, so 1 a quarter, 4 life events. Now, this would be birthdays, home anniversaries, children's birthdays, wedding anniversaries, children graduating from school or college, maybe loss of a family member or loss of a pet. It doesn't have to be all positive. It's ways that we can show we care. We just recently went through a snow and winter and ice storm. Maybe you're reaching out to them as a life event, just checking in to see how they're doing. And then 4 handwritten notes. Then we have 60, yes, 60 unique touches. The reason why is we have 5 touches for each. Now, these are things like a client event. We're going to call, text, and email them an invite to the event. We'll do the event itself, and then we'll follow up afterwards. That's 5 touches per event. We have 1 per month. It's not necessarily 1 event per month because we also do pop-bys and giveaways. Those are what cycle through our lead generation through our database. And then last, the strategy 5 is a database growth plan. We'll talk about more about what that is in a second when we get to the 4-on-1. Then we scroll down and we get to the priority 2. Now, these are ways that we stay in touch or build our lead funnel for agent referrals. We have an agent newsletter monthly that goes out. We want to attend all KW relevant courses and training where we can. This is the ALC clinics, Accelerate courses, Success Through Others, MAPS Masterminds, Family Reunion, Mega Camp, etc. All things that offer ways to build relationships with agents, especially out of our market. We have a goal to add 4 agents to the database every month. We need to grow the database with more agents that we can build relationships with. Now, the good news is strategy 2 oftentimes contributes to strategy 3. Wishing them a happy birthday and then networking on social media. There are groups on there that we're a part of. And then lastly would be our 3rd funnel, uploading a video to YouTube per week, as well as an agent coaching video that builds our YouTube channel. Social media posts. These are not as specific as I would like to see, and that's because we have a database plan on the bottom where we go into hyper detail on each of these things. So you can either make it very detailed on the GPS, or you can have a separate sheet that will go into what some of these activities look like, depending on where you're at in your business, and your coach can walk you through that. Now, then we go to what's called a 4-on-1. Now, this is an accountability tool that breaks down those GPS goals into specific activities that you're going to put on a weekly basis. Now, here's a best practice tip for working with a 4-on-1. Print these out. Have them as PDFs or printed off pieces of paper on your desk. And you should do a new one every single week. And I'll talk about why in a second. Now, your annual goals and your monthly goals will stay the same. Those will repeat. If I want to do 48 houses a year or close, I would write under annual goals, I will close 48 houses this year. Monthly goals, I will close 4 houses this month. And then weekly goals, week 1 would be the activities that are required to reach those goals. Now, you may say, well, where do I get those activities from? 2 places. Number 1, going back to that GPS we just talked about. So things like I will send out my monthly newsletter. I will send out my agent newsletter. I will send the call invites to the people for an event this month. I will drop off a pop-by. I will this, I will that. In the week 1, you will do 1 week. Now, the following week, you will then go to week 2. And at the Sunday or Monday before the business starts, you will do your week 2 activities. Now it may be I will text the invite because last week we called. You might not have to send your monthly newsletter because that's monthly. You've already done that. So it may be things like I will update the birthdays and send those that I need to. I will do my quarterly care calls. Your weekly goals are the only ones that roll over. And what I mean by that is if you have a weekly goal to send out your newsletter and you don't send it out, move that to week 2. That's why we do this week by week, because you want to make sure it gets done this month. Now, if you have a monthly goal of I'm going to do 4 houses and I only do 3, we're not going to add 1 to next month. Our monthly goals are still going to stay 4 each month. As you start getting towards the end of the year, you may make some adjustments there with your coach or with your accountability partner, where you may say, okay, how important is it to you to sell 48 houses this year? Very. It means everything to me. Okay, well, you've done 26 year to date and there's 3 months left. So we have a gap. So in order to reach that gap, We need to figure out what our monthly goals are and increase them. Or you may say, 48 was my unit goal at the end of the year. My average sales price has actually been much higher. So I only need to sell 36 houses, not 48. And so my gap is much smaller. So my monthly goals can adjust accordingly. You just don't adjust your monthly goals after 1 month. Typically, it's quarterly where we will revisit and reflect on those. And that is where your coach can be key to come in. Now, we will start using 411s and GPSs moving forward. But this is the general overview. And then last, Command. If you're a part of Keller Williams World, you have access to Command. And in Command, there are tons of tools and tracking and ways to hold accountable. Most recently, we've implemented or updated our Pro Coach tracker and activities. You should be getting a smart plan or an email saying, put your activities in Command. Well, that goes to guess who? Your coach. So then your coach can reach back out to you after they see a result and say, hey, I noticed you only had 15 conversations last week. Based on your 411, you were going to have 30. Tell me more about this. You can also generate referrals to and from. We'll talk about our database exercise in another training, or you can go back to watch some of the past trainings where we talk about that on what size your database needs to be. Real briefly, if my database needs to be 500 and I have 300, I have a gap of 200 people. So I may have an annual goal of I will add 200 people to the database. Then I break it down into monthly and then each week. And this is where you can start doing some of these exercises, and Command is where the database lives. Now, we want to focus on activities. We can't control the number of closings we have to an extent. What we can control is the activities that directly lead to those closings. That is why we spend so much time talking about lead generation. We focus on the calls, also known as conversations, follow-ups, going on appointments, our conversions, and we have to measure these activities. If I don't know how many conversations about real estate I'm having every week, I start to lose my conversion rates. They're not as accurate. And so it becomes more and more difficult to track or focus the activities that result in these closings that we end up wanting. Now, quick story. If you're thinking about a rowing event, and I know it's getting ready to be the Winter Olympics, but let's think about Summer Olympics for a second. Typically, in a rowing event, there are 8 rowers, and they're all facing backwards with what's called a coxswain, facing the finish line, meaning 8 rowers are facing one way and one person's facing the direction where the boat is going. The coxswain is the person who's giving the direction. They're also giving out calls or verbal cues. Think about that as your coach. Now, if one rower stops rowing or rows at a different pace than the rest of the rowers, the whole boat will veer off course. It is important to keep everybody simultaneously moving in the same direction at the same pace. If we all are on the same boat and all have the same pace and the same cadence when we're rowing, that's when the boat rows the smoothest, and that's when it goes the fastest. It stays straight, and it's in what we call alignment. This can be true for you and your business when your income goal is in alignment with your unit goal, is in alignment with your activities. And then you start to build out the rest of your boat with those measures or those accountability measures, such as a coach, a partner, and these tools that will keep you in a straight line, in alignment, fast, and headed towards your goals. So while we log off today, accountability isn't a tool to keep people in line. It's the engine that keeps the team in motion. As you are reflecting on your goals and your activities for 2026, I want you to think, if everyone followed through the way I do, would I be proud of where our boat is heading? Another way of looking at that is, if I met all of my activities and my measures, would I be happy with where my goals get me? Thanks for watching today. I look forward to catching up next week to talk more about accountability and measurables. And in the meantime, good luck with your success out there. Talk soon.